Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, my little monsters, wherever you may be. I'm a dad. It's what I've always wanted to be, ever since I was a kid. I think a lot of people found it weird that at first my biggest dream wasn't to be a baseball player, or a doctor, or an astronaut. Okay, like all kids, I kind of wanted to be that too. But instead, it was to be a dad. Hell, even at 5, I played along with my twin sisters when they played around with their dolls and played house. I met the love of my life when I was 17. It was love at first sight for both of us. Katie was wild, caring, passionate, a woman whose desires for children made me look like I hated them. We married young, at 20, and by 23 we had a cozy little home. We were both itching to start a family, so you can imagine our heartbreak when we found out that we just couldn't have them. We are a perfectly twisted match for each other, both of us unable to reproduce. It broke Katie's heart, leaving her to cry on my shoulder night after night over how she couldn't do the one thing a woman is meant to do, and I cried along with her. She wasn't alone in this. My heart was broken too, since I also couldn't do the one thing that every man should do. The one thing my heart had longed for since I had been a child, and it couldn't be mine. We were not disheartened though. Just because we couldn't have biological children didn't mean we couldn't be parents. Growing up, one of my best friends was adopted, so I pitched the idea to Katie right away, and she loved it. No matter what, we wanted children. Any child that needed a home would be welcome here. With that, we started the long, difficult, and tiring journey of adoption. The journey that brings me to write this letter today. Fast forward, 9 years, 3 foster children, and 1 adoption later, and it's present day, Monday, April 10th. The first child brought to us over 4 months after we had been approved was our foster daughter Sadie. Cute as a button, sweet little angel of only 2 years old, needed to be fostered for a specific time period, 6 months in our case. While the situation with her family was worked out, being our first foster child, she ruled our lives. We fell head over heels for her from day one. Letting her go back to her biological family almost broke us apart. But we stayed strong. Sadie was going to her grandma where she would have a loving home. She came from a good family, just a family with problems. You go into fostering a child knowing that it's not always permanent, that not every child can be adopted. You would think that would make letting them go easier, but it's not. It's heartbreaking, and the heartbreak is very real, only to get worse. The second child, an older boy 7 years old, was brought to us in the middle of the night on a rainy Tuesday in December, just a month after Sadie left. The most heartbreaking of all, one that still haunts me to this day, Jacob, and I say this with all certainty, was my child, is my child. If any of you have kids, then you know what I'm talking about. And if any of you have adopted a child, you know even better. When you have a child, there's a connection there, a bond that cannot be broken for anything in the world. The feeling is that you would give your life 1,000,000 times over before a hair on that child's head is harmed. That feeling that I get, God, when Jacob was brought to us, and a feeling I still have. From the first day Jacob and I were bonded at the hip, he was everything I wanted in a son, the spitting image of me, inside and out. Not possible, I know. But our resemblance was uncanny. There wasn't an initial hostility in him, which is common for most kids. And instead, he acted as though he was finally home. Katie had felt the same, like her son was finally home, and finally it was like our entire lives were complete. Perfect. We had our child finally. We were happy, and we stayed that way for 3 years. 3 years of baseball games, science fairs, award ceremonies, birthdays, Christmas road trips, 3 years of laughter, tears, smiles, and 1,000,000 hugs and kisses. Yet this was one of the cases where it was too good to be true. And long story short, the adoption wasn't going to happen. Where I live, as long as a blood relative of the child is interested in getting the child back, they will get that child. No matter what the child says, no matter if their life is better here than at their new home. It doesn't matter. To this day, almost 5.5 years later, I could still kill the lawyers who handled our case, who let our child return to the home of his abusers, back to the home where he would just die 2 weeks later. 2 weeks after leaving us. Not a day goes by where I don't cry for Jacob, my son. If his biological parents were not put in jail for what had happened, I would have killed them. Not a doubt in my mind or Katie's. After Jacob, I almost gave up. But Katie couldn't. Like I said, her fire to help children, to be a mother, was undying. And being the incredible woman she is, she wanted to try again. We wanted to remember Jacob, and we did this by taking another child. A child that needed us only 4 months after we lost Jacob. That child being Abel, our now adopted son. Brought to us only at 3 days old, he was a mess. Born in one of the worst prisons in the city, he was drug dependent thanks to his piece of shit bio-host mother. His adoption was easy. He had no family other than his mom, who was doing 25 to life in prison, and wanted nothing to do with him. She practically gave him to us, while the adoption, it was a piece of cake. Raising baby Abel was not. We joke with him now that he was the worst baby alive, but the best kid ever. I know, cruel, but that's just true. The happiest newly 5-year-old in the world, and the sweetest too. I see Jacob in him every day. Hell, they even resembled each other with their tan skin and big brown eyes. All the feelings I felt for him had been almost reborn in Abel. And I know that I'm still capable of being a really good dad. That Jacob was sent to teach me how to be this father. While we may have saved Abel, he really saved us. He healed our broken hearts and showed us that a family can be healed and be a family again. He brought love and light to our lives, to the 2 broken lives of 2 broken people. And because of this, we decided we weren't done. One wasn't enough. Katie and I both wanted more kids, and Abel needed to be a big brother. But we got back up to our social worker a few weeks later, and there was a child that needed a foster family. A child that's currently sitting in the living room playing with my son as I type this. I watch from the kitchen as her long blonde hair swings around in the heart-shaped pattern right around her face, and she slides back and forth on her rocking horse. But she isn't laughing, or even smiling. She's staring at Abel, who just a few feet away is drawing pictures of spaceships. He takes after his dad in his love of space. Her nails are digging into the wooden handles on the rocking horse, her little knuckles turning white. You might think it's hard to fear a 7-year-old, but I promise you it isn't. Abel gets up and skips over to me, blind to anything going on around him. He's such a happy child. He only sees the best in everyone and everything.
Daddy!
His voice is excited, handing me his latest masterpiece.
It's you and Mommy in the spaceship, and it's going really fast.
His tiny voice cracking with glee. I smiled and I patted him on his head, ruffling his dark curls around my little Picasso AB. I beamed proudly. This one is definitely getting framed once Mom comes home. His smile couldn't be any wider, and he quickly races off back into the living room to make another drawing. I watch as he picks up a red marker and gets to work, his tiny face becoming more focused than I'd ever seen it before. My eyes can't help but drift down to his shirt collar. Right by the back of his neck, there's a big white gauze band-aid clinging to his skin tightly. You can see the red from underneath it still. Here's the third band-aid we put over the stitches. The cut was so deep that it wouldn't stop bleeding. no matter how hard they tried. Even with the stitches, some blood still finds its way out. It happened 3 days ago, since my once happy-go-lucky life was changed. Katie doesn't suspect much yet, and I fear she thinks I'm being overdramatic, that I'm being overprotective of Abel, that I fear I'll lose him, just like I lost Jacob. Ellie comes from a bad home, she reassured me. What you saw could have just been something else. She's 8, for God's sake, Jack. She couldn't hurt a fly. Part of me feels guilty for even thinking this, for suspecting that a child could be so evil. It doubts my sanity, making me think that maybe, just maybe, I'm finally going crazy. Maybe I just imagined the whole thing. Maybe I'm just afraid that I'll lose another child, that my heart will be obliterated once again. But I know what I saw, and I know that this child is not good. Ellie told us Abel had slipped in the kitchen, that he had just grabbed some ice from the freezer, dropped one, and slipped, falling down on the metal vent, that it was the metal surface sticking out to slice the back of Abel's neck. Abel was way too upset to tell us what happened, and the doctor said it's normal for young children to black out after getting hurt. Everyone seems to believe that the big blue eyes beaming up told us that Ellie was telling the truth. And it was believable, and the bruise on Abel's head showed he'd fallen. What else could have happened? It was an accident, I was told. Everyone went on with their lives. No one questioned it. Abel has totally forgotten about the whole incident by now, returning to his normal self the next morning. Yet I can't forget, because I saw what happened in the kitchen. I was too late to stop it. Being from the garage, I could see into that kitchen perfectly. It's a little far ways off, but at night, you can see into it perfectly when the lights are on. Katie was upstairs, getting the bath for Abel ready. In the meantime, the kids were putting away their dishes in the dishwasher, and I had been outside in the garage for a while, finishing up pumping some bike tires for the bike ride that we were going to go on in the morning, which obviously didn't end up happening. For some reason, I looked out the garage and into the kitchen to see if Katie had gotten the kids, and what I saw paralyzed me. Abel was standing up on the little kid platform that we have for them to be able to reach the sink. He was washing his plate, well, rather playing with bubbles and throwing his plate around in the water. Ellie was putting away her plate when she opened the silverware drawer and stared at it for a few seconds before pulling out the big steak knife that we kept there and turned to Abel. Right then, I took off running and I did not stop. Once I reached the kitchen, it was too late, and the chaos was already surrounding me. Abel had fallen back on the floor, a pool of blood rising from behind him. He was screaming and the color was draining out of him, his tiny hands trying to hold down to the back of his neck. The next few minutes were a big blur as we rushed around trying to get Abel into the car and to the hospital. But I remember that I had screamed at Ellie, which had upset my wife. Ellie was standing in the hallway as if she hadn't been in the kitchen at all, a confused expression on her face. Yet, it didn't seem to alert her at all. She seemed excited. She was trying so hard not to smile, I could see it in her face, to show me that she was enjoying my son's pain, and the pain that she wrought on all of us. Katie didn't notice because all of the frenzy, but Ellie had forgotten something. We put the kids in the car, and I ran back to grab Katie's purse when I saw it. The water was still running in the sink, and when I went to turn it off, something caught my eye. Just under the bubbles, something shiny and glistening. I reached down and pulled up the same steak knife, the same one I saw Ellie grab from that drawer. The water had turned lightly red from Abel's blood. I drained the water and put the kitchen knife on the counter before running to the car. I do not know what to do. I'm afraid my daughter is going to hurt Abel again. But no one believes what I saw, and I know what I saw. Katie is too caught up in the joy, the love, the happiness of having a new child, and finally having a daughter, and I don't want to ruin that for her. She's been through so much. I can't break her heart again. But I cannot live in this house and put my son at risk either.